We've been in the Gospel of Luke looking at various ways that Jesus has intervened to heal people, to um, demonstrate his power as God, to perform miracles. And last week we talked about Jesus intervening to cast out a legion of demons that had possessed a man. And the community around this event was so thankful for what Jesus did. They told him to leave. So we're going to pick up that Jesus left that part and crossed over the Sea of Galilee to where our lesson starts tonight. Now, all of us have been in this church a prayerful congregation. We ask Jesus by prayer to intervene, to provide protection, assistance, even perform miracles. And tonight's lesson has something to expand our understanding of what Jesus expects and what Jesus rewards when we pray to him. And I called tonight's lesson, Jesus Rewards Faith Exercised with Confident Expectation. That's not the words that the Bible particularly uses. They say you must believe, and you must continue to believe when you exercise your faith. But I substituted confident expectation because I think that's what tonight's lesson is really talking about. And I quoted to start our lesson, James 1, verses 6 through 7, where James says, "But let him ask in faith without doubting. For the doubter is like a surging sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord." Well, when you're doubting, you're not believing that Jesus is going to answer what you're asking him to do. You toss and turn and you say, well, I've asked him, but the Lord's not going to really do that for me. I'm asking too much, or it's not going to be in his will. So we're going to look at two people who came to Jesus demonstrating their faith with confident expectations that Jesus would help them. One, a ruler of the synagogue whose daughter was dying, and the other, a woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years. Jesus responded to their faith, restoring the daughter and healing the woman. So we're going to talk about the faith that's displayed by the ruler of the synagogue who came to Jesus because his daughter was dying, and by the woman who came to Jesus to heal her from an ailment that had caused her to suffer from bleeding for 12 years. One, the ruler of the synagogue, expressed his confidence by asking Jesus to save his daughter from dying, and the other who silently believed that Jesus would make her well, but did not ask Jesus out loud to heal her. In faith, both confidently believed that Jesus would help them. After the woman was completely healed, after she touched Jesus's robe, she was fearful that she had done something wrong by not first asking Jesus to heal her. After the ruler of the synagogue asked Jesus to come to his home and save his daughter from dying, his faith was tested by news that his daughter had already died, and by the skepticism and by the laughter of those who ridiculed Jesus for saying that his daughter was not dead, she was just asleep. Both of these accounts teach us about the kind of faith that enables us to receive Jesus's help and blessing. The faith of these two individuals who Jesus helped are found in Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 56. However, additional information found in Mark 5, verses 21 through 43, helps us further understand the lesson of faith revealed by these scriptures. So, following the pattern that we used in the past, we're going to look at these scriptures as a whole, and then we'll go into the outline. So Luke 8, verses 40 through 56 states, "When Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Just then, a man named Jairus came. He was a leader of the synagogue. He fell down at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him to come to his house because he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was at death's door. While he was going, the crowds were nearly crushing him. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years, who had spent all she had on doctors, yet could not be healed by any, approached from behind and touched the tassel of his robe. Instantly, her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you." "Someone did touch me," said Jesus. "I know that power has gone out from me." When the woman saw that she was discovered, she came trembling and fell down before him. In the presence of all the people, she declared the reason she had touched him and how she was instantly cured. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue's leader's house saying, "Your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore." When Jesus heard it, he answered him, "Don't be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well." After he came to the house, he let no one enter with him except Peter, John, James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was crying and mourning for her. But he said, "Stop crying, for she is not dead, but asleep." They started laughing at him because they knew she was dead. So he took her by the hand and called out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned and she got up at once. Then he gave orders that she be given something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. So that's the account in Luke, which is the gospel we're studying. But we're going to go to Mark and his account of the same event because there's some additional information that's important. So starting chapter 5, verse 21 of the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the sea. One of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and kept begging him, "My little daughter is at death's door. Come and lay your hands on her so she can get well and live." So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following and pressing against him. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she became worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came behind him and in the crowd and touched his robe. For she said, "If I can just touch his robes, I'll be made well." Instantly, her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was cured of her affliction. At once, Jesus realized in himself that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my robes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" So he was looking around to see who had done this. Then the woman, knowing what happened to her, came with fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be free from your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue leader's house came and said, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" But when Jesus overheard what was said, he told the synagogue leader, "Don't be afraid, only believe." He did not let anybody accompany him except Peter, James, and John, and James, his brother. The other disciples were there where Jesus landed, but Jesus only took these disciples with him. They came to the leader's house, and he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why are you making commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." They started laughing at him, but he put all of them outside. He took the child's father, mother, and those who were with him and entered the place where the child was. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl got up and began to walk. She was 12 years old. At this, they were utterly astounded. Then he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this and said that she should be given something to eat. The main message that I want you to get from tonight's lesson is that Jesus responds to those that come to him in faith with a heart confident expectation. In other words, to believe that Jesus will answer their prayers. We should never be afraid of asking Jesus to help us, and we should not let our faith be diminished by the ridicule and skepticism of those who do not believe. So we're going to look about asking for Jesus' help with confident expectation. We're going to look at faith to boldly reach out to Christ, faith to secretly reach out to Christ, faith tested, and faith encouraged and rewarded. And then we'll have a discussion about what we talked about tonight. So asking for Jesus' help with confident expectation, faith to boldly reach out to Christ. After departing from Gerasenes, Jesus returned to Galilee, where he is met by a large crowd who are waiting to see what Jesus would do next. Luke 8, verse 40, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Jairus, a ruler from a local synagogue, boldly pressed through the crowd to speak with Jesus. Verse 41, just then a man named Jairus came. He was a leader of the synagogue. He fell down at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him to come to his house. Having taught in most of the synagogues, Jesus had likely met or encountered Jairus on a prior occasion. Because the large crowd had assembled around Jesus, Jairus must have pushed himself through the crowd in order to reach Jesus. You can see, as we've seen in other times where Jesus being pressed by a crowd that were crowding around him, so much so that on previous occasions we saw Jesus get into a boat and go out into the Sea of Galilee just so he could get some distance from the crowd that was around him. Well, Jairus came to Jesus with the purpose of asking Jesus to save his daughter. So when he got there, he must have, you could just see him pushing himself like you're trying to get to the front of a concert. Anyway, trying to get in to see Jesus. And when he did, he dropped at Jesus' feet. Jairus came to Jesus to ask Jesus to save his only daughter from dying. Verse 42, because he had an only daughter about 12 years old, and she was at death's door. Jairus knew his daughter was close to death and came to Jesus having faith that Jesus could save her. Jairus was in a hurry to get to Jesus to go with him because his daughter's death was imminent. Jairus not only came to Jesus in faith, but he came believing with a confident expectation that Jesus not only had the power, but that Jesus would respond by saving his daughter from dying. From Mark's account, Jairus was confident that Jesus would save his daughter. In Mark 5, verses 22 to 23, one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and kept begging him, "My little daughter is at death's door. Come and lay your hands on her so she can get well and live." You're talking about a man that's coming with Jesus with confidence that Jesus could save his daughter. Jesus followed his disciples and the crowd that had gathered to meet Jesus and started to walk towards Jairus' house. So we have Jairus expressing verbally that his request that Jesus come and save his daughter. And we have him expressing his confidence that Jesus would save his daughter. Now we're going to talk about faith to secretly reach out to Christ. As Jesus was walking towards Jairus' house, a woman who had been suffering from an ailment that had caused her to bleed for 12 years touched Jesus' robe and was immediately healed. In Luke's account, starting with verse 42, while he was going, the crowds were nearly crushing him. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years, who had spent all she had on doctors, yet could not be healed by any, approached from behind and touched the tassel of his robe. Instantly, her bleeding stopped. The woman had exhausted all of her money and resources going to doctors to be treated and healed. Not only had the doctors failed to heal the woman, but her condition had gotten worse. Mark 5, verse 26, on the contrary, she became worse. The woman wanted to remain anonymous and did not ask Jesus to heal her openly. The woman had heard about Jesus and went to Jesus to be healed. However, the woman did not want to ask Jesus to heal her in front of everybody in the crowd. Even though the woman had not asked Jesus to heal her, she knew in her heart that if she merely touched Jesus' robe, she would be healed. Mark 5, verses 27 through 29. Having heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his robe. For she said, if I can just touch his robes, I will be made well. Instantly her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was cured of her affliction. Not only did the woman come to Jesus in faith, but she touched his robe with a confident expectation that by doing so, she would be healed. Her faith was unflinching, and her confidence was steadfast. Noticing that power had been drained from him, Jesus asked who had touched him. Verse 45 in Luke's Gospel, who touched me, Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you. Someone did touch me, said Jesus. I know that power has gone out from me. Having been discovered, the woman was afraid that she had done something wrong and was embarrassed that she had touched Jesus to heal her without asking or obtaining his consent. When the woman saw that she was discovered, she came trembling and fell before him. In the presence of all the people, she declared the reason she had touched him and how she was instantly cured. Acknowledging the faith of the woman, Jesus comforted her and gave her assurance. Luke 8, verses 48. Daughter, he said to her, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And if you remember in Mark's account, Jesus also said that she's been healed from her affliction. Jesus acknowledged the faith of the woman, which healed her, but also gently comforted her to take her away all of her fear and embarrassment. The use of the word daughter by Jesus was a term of affection towards this woman. Additionally, Jesus assured her that her ailment had been cured and that she should no longer be anxious because her prayer had been answered. So here we have a contrast between Jairus, who came expecting Jesus to heal and save his daughter from dying, and he asked Jesus openly to go to his house immediately and save his daughter. And then we have this woman who silently in her mind and in her heart believed that Jesus would heal her, but did not ask Jesus openly in front of everybody. And so now we're going to have the discussion of faith being tested. While Jesus was distracted by the woman who had been healed by touching his robe, a person who came from Jairus' home reported that Jairus' daughter had died. Luke 8:49. While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue leader's house saying, your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Jairus had come to Jesus to save his daughter from dying. Jairus came to Jesus urgently asking Jesus to come to his house immediately before it was too late. Even though the person who came to report that Jairus' daughter had died believed that it was too late and nothing more could be done, Jairus, like all of us, would have come to the conclusion that Jairus' daughter was too late. Can you imagine Jairus begging Jesus to immediately come? Jesus starts coming, and then all of a sudden Jesus is interrupted by this woman who's been bleeding. And Jesus starts engaging in a conversation with the disciples about who touched him. And then he gets in a conversation with this woman who comes forward and explains that she's the one that touched the robe. And Jairus is sitting there. He's probably looking at his watch saying, Jesus, come on, you got to save my daughter. And you could just see the anxiety and stress in Jairus as he's observing Jesus talking to this woman and not heading towards Jairus' house. And then all of a sudden, Jairus finds out from somebody that comes from his house that his daughter had died. Jairus' faith is being tested because of the interruption of Jesus attending to this woman, interrupted and tested by the fact that it's too late. The daughter had already died. Jairus' faith was being tested, but Jesus gave assurance to Jairus to remain confident that his daughter would be saved. In verse 50, when Jesus heard it, he answered him, don't be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well. Jairus must have witnessed that Jesus had miraculously healed the woman who had touched Jesus's robe. Word had given him more this had given him more confidence that Jesus could bring his daughter back to life. But the woman whose bleeding had been bleeding for 12 years was still alive when Jesus healed her. Jesus's words must have given Jairus some comfort, but Jairus's faith was being tested to the max. Jesus's encouragement to Jairus to only believe is better translated as a present tense imperative for Jairus to keep believing or to not give up hope. And so what you have here is Jairus was confident that Jesus could save his daughter if she didn't die, but not so confident because his daughter was already dead. And so you could see that Jairus's faith was being tested. And yet Jesus, knowing this, knowing what was in the heart of Jairus, said, continue to believe. Continue with your confident expectation that your daughter will be made well. So they continued to Jairus's house, and Jairus's faith was further tested by the ridicule and skepticism of those who did not believe what Jesus had told them. Without actually seeing the dead child, when Jesus arrived at Jairus's house, Jesus asked why everybody was weeping and wailing, telling them that the child was not dead, but was asleep. We go back to Mark's account, verses 38 and 39. They came to the leader's house, and he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." Responding to Jesus saying that the child had not died, but was asleep, the people derided and mocked Jesus. In verse 40 of Mark's gospel, they started laughing at him, but he put them all outside. So they're all around the child that had died. They're weeping and mourning. Jesus arrives and he says, "Why all the commotion? This child is not dead. She's asleep." And all the people, they wouldn't stop believing their lying eyes. They saw that this child is dead, and they laughed at Jesus and ridiculed him. In Luke 8, chapter 8, verses 51 through 53, Luke accounts for it this way. After he came to the house, he let no one enter with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was crying and mourning for her, but he said, "Stop crying, for she is not dead, but asleep." They started laughing at him because they knew she was dead. Can you imagine the testing of Jairus' faith as his family and friends mocked Jesus, refusing to believe Jesus and reacting with unbelief and worldly skepticism? So now we get to the last part of our lesson, faith encouraged and rewarded. After the people started laughing at Jesus, Jesus removed all the naysayers from the home. They started laughing at him, but he put them all outside. Despite being mocked, Jesus took his disciples and the child's parents into the house, further testing Jairus' faith. So Mark chapter 5, verse 40, he took the child's father, mother, and those who were with him, the disciples, and entered the place where the child was. Faith in Jesus is not based upon the wisdom of the world. Speaking to the Corinthians, Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 3 and 5, "I came to you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling. My speech and my proclamation were not with persuasive words of wisdom, but with a powerful demonstration by the Spirit, so that your faith might not be based upon men's wisdom, but on God's power." And here, all the worldly wisdom, including Bob Fry's, if I were there and that child was dead, I would be talking a worldly saying, say, "It's over. Give it up. Donate the organs to the DMV, whatever." Because it's an awful hard thing to believe that once somebody is dead, that they can be brought back to life. But Jesus took the parents and his disciples inside the room where the child was laying, and he spoke to the child, summoned her spirit to return, and told her to get up. In Mark chapter 5, verse 41, then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Under Jewish law, touching a dead person made a person unclean, yet Jesus took hold of her hand. Jesus demonstrated his power over the child's departed spirit calling upon her spirit to return to her dead body and restore life to the child. Immediately, the girl got up and began to walk. She was 12 years old. Jairus' faith was rewarded. Luke 8, verses 55, 56. Her spirit returned and she got up at once. Then he gave orders that she be given something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. Jesus demonstrated his ongoing love towards the child by telling her parents to give her something to eat. This child had probably been sick, had not been eating, was in a weakened condition. She died, and then Jesus restored her spirit to her, and she lived. And Jesus was even concerned about what would happen next. She needed nourishment because she was now alive again. Jesus approves and rewards those who come to him in faith. Now, faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. For our ancestors won God's approval by it. The writer of Hebrews then gave examples of the faith of Abel when he offered sacrifices to God, and Enoch, who did not experience death because during his lifetime he pleased God in faith. Hebrews 11, 1 through 12. What's really remarkable is we saw Jesus's power over the legion of demons that he cast out of the man that was possessed by the demons. We saw Jesus's power over nature when he calmed the waters. We saw his power over ailments when he healed a man that had been paralyzed for most of his life, a blind man that had been blind since birth. But this is the first instance in the gospel where we see Jesus bringing life back to a dead child. Imagine that Jesus even accounts for our spirits after they depart from our body, because he summoned that spirit back into this child's life, body, and the child came back to life. Jesus accounts for every living being, whether dead or not, whether in physical body or in spirit. And this is a powerful example of that. So with these two people that came to Jesus in faith with confident expectations that Jesus would heal them and keep the daughter from dying, we learn from them that it's not just words of faith. It has to be faith that comes from the heart, a heart that is confident when we ask Jesus for something that he is going to respond and bless us with what we receive. So with that, we're going to go into a discussion of asking Jesus help with confident expectation.
Record.
By way of inferences, conclusions, and applications, Jesus is not impressed with shallow words of faith. Faith must be accompanied by a steadfast belief in the heart that Jesus listens to our prayers, has the power to respond to our requests, and will bless us by giving us what we ask for according to his goodness, mercy, and will. Jesus knows the heart of those who come to him in prayer. Before we can expect Jesus to answer our prayers and receive his blessings, we must ask in faith with a confident expectation that Jesus will respond in a manner which will glorify God and draw us closer to him. Our prayers to Jesus can be presented out loud in the presence of others who hear our prayers, or made silently in our hearts. Both Jairus and the woman who secretly touched Jesus' robe came to Jesus in faith, confidently believing and expecting Jesus to bless them and answer their prayer requests. From the manner that Jesus answered their prayers, both experienced the glory of God and were drawn closer to Jesus. And that's all I wrote. The Spirit